Tracy Dando is a multifaceted individual with a passion for mental health advocacy and community support. As a founder and CEO of Safe Space Organization and co-founder of Roots to Rise Retreats, Tracy has dedicated herself to creating safe and empowering spaces for individuals on their journey to recovery and self-discovery. With a background in special education and certification as an eating disorder recovery coach from the Carolyn Costin Institute, Tracy brings a unique perspective to her work, drawing from her own experience of recovery and perseverance. Recently, Tracy achieved a significant milestone by delivering her first Tedx Talk at Grand Canyon University in Phoenix, Arizona. During this episode, we talk about Tracy's story, the day-to-day of safe space, and supporting kids' emotional and psychological health. So you live in Rochester now?
I do now.
Wait, are you from Syracuse?
Yeah, so grew up in Tully.
Oh,
That's how Dan
nice.
and Tom
That's
and
how-
my
yeah.
brother is what grew up with Tom. So, and then started here. And then my ex-husband got remarried to a woman in Rochester, and we have 2 kids. And so eventually it just didn't work anymore, the back and forth.
Want to be closer.
Yeah, in Rochester. I love Rochester. It's just my community is here. What I'm trying to build is here. So it's a little bit of 2 lives at this point,
Okay.
but it's working.
I actually grew up on Tully Lake in
No,
the
you
summers.
did not.
Yeah,
Really?
I didn't grow up in, but we had a camp out there. And my mom literally spent every summer out there. We spent, a lot of our time out there. My grandparents owned it. And then my parents just bought a place 2 down.
No way.
Yeah, so this is the first summer we'll have with our kids.
That's
and
exciting.
Spending nights out there. And it's
I feel like
it's a
the
special
Tully
place for
Lake
us.
community is like a tight community.
Oh, yeah.
It's all the same.
They
I remember
know
trying to
every house, like who will live
I remember
there.
trying to get in with that when I was that. I'm like, guys, it's so fun. But yeah, there was no getting into that. You had to be there.
So you're from Tully.
From Tully.
Where did you go to college?
I went to
Obviously, you were
RIT.
taught at West Hill.
Yep. So
Okay.
went to RIT for nutrition and then moved to Korea for 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Actually was hit by a car, so moved home to rehabilitate, and then got my teaching degree in special ed and started teaching at West Hill shortly after, and then moved actually to China, came back, and then started teaching at West Hill.
What did you do in South Korea? Well, I assume South Korea.
So yes. But at that point in time, I'm like, wait, all I knew was there was a North and a South. I taught, but my ex-husband worked over there as an engineer. So I did teach English and special needs.
My sister did the same.
Did she?
Yeah. She was over there for, I think, 2 years teaching English.
Very
to,
cool.
Young kids.
Did she enjoy it?
Yeah, she did. Yeah. And we still have the pictures of her with all the kids in our basement and her kids now. When they were young, they'd look, they're like, what the heck? They're like, they get jealous.
Who are these?
Cute.
Who are these kids?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. So you spent some time in Asia.
And then when I got back, I started Safe Space prior to COVID. So throughout that whole journey, I struggled with an eating disorder. So I was diagnosed at 12. And I just was in and out of treatment facilities for most of my life. Yet the outside world saw a completely different Tracy. I was prom queen and 3-star athlete. And I was that person that everybody thought was good. Yet I was living this other life. And enough had happened in Syracuse that once I came back to Syracuse after living abroad and living in Rochester, it's like the eating disorder came back, and it's like my body had remembered what had happened here. And so I was like, what do I need to create? Because I was a young mom, and Safe Space kind of just came to me one night. And so I drew it. I was a special needs teacher, so I drew it. And then I just was like, how do I start to make this happen? And it was one slow piece at a time.
Was part of that, selfishly, I need to create somewhere for me, but also knowing that there's probably a lot of people who are going through similar struggles.
Yeah. I mean, it wasn't meant to be a business in the beginning at all. It was selfishly totally meant for me. And I knew that my kids were 3 and 1 at the point, 4 and 1 at the point. And I was like, I cannot leave them again. And so it started as that. And then when COVID hit, I was like, wow, nobody knows how to deal with their feelings and process their emotions.
Yeah.
And everybody's dealing with anxiety and depression. And this isn't just a me thing. And so it kind of started to grow from there.
Yeah. I mean, COVID kind of exposed a lot.
A lot. I think it took everybody's stuff and brought it to like the forefront.
Yeah.
And it happened so quickly that I remember looking at the people that I had always like looked up to and admired and being like, wow, they don't even know. Like they're struggling. Like
Yeah.
everybody went to their closest coping strategy and grabbed onto it, you know? And I was like, okay, this is a community thing that might have a chance here. So I just started to slowly roll it out and add more and more. And it was the first thing that truly made me feel like alive. And so I just ran with it.
How'd you start it? Like,
How
what?
they
Hey,
start.
what? It's one thing to say I'm going to start this safe space. Did you know the name already, or was it?
The name came because so in treatment, um, they used to in art therapy, they used to ask you to draw your safe space. And mine would always be a lake. Like growing up in
Oh,
Tully, it was always this lake like that was surrounded by trees. And um, for some reason, the feeling of safety kept coming up. Like, why do I not even feel safe in my own body, let alone my own town? And um, so when it came to me, it was a feeling, and it was like, okay, so it's like soft couches and colors and lighting, and the design came pretty quickly, and then I was like, but it's also the people, and it was so crazy because you sit around a treatment facility with a bunch of people who are struggling with significant trauma and eating disorders, and they're being nobody but themselves. Like the raw version of them is coming out. And I had never been able to do that with anybody. I think the part of me that was practiced and performant, like was a performance. Like I knew how to be on. I knew how to say what I needed to say and be who I needed to be in certain situations. I was
yeah.
good at that. But being me, like authentic Tracy, I didn't know how to do that. And just all these people sitting around a room, I was like, holy, like, why don't we do this in real life? Like, why don't we have these conversations around the dinner table and like with our friends? And so those two pieces came. And I remember I created a business plan. I went like I started asking people about it, telling people about it. And they were like, yeah, Trace, that's really cool. Like nobody really saw it. I was like, nope, you're not going to rain on this parade. Like
Yeah.
I'm doing this. And then when COVID hit, it was pretty clear to, I think, everybody that mental health was not going away. So I just started running groups. I started running classes, and then I started running fundraisers. And I was like, we're gonna raise $200,000, and we're gonna make this space happen.
Sounds like perfect timing.
I mean, it slightly was. I
Yeah.
think COVID brought it to the forefront, yet it also slowed the world down a lot, you know? So I think it helped and hurt us in a way. But yeah, I mean, it definitely allowed me to get the mission out on social media. Like socials that was all getting bigger at that
It
point.
was
And it was
everything at
all
that point
right,
because you
because
weren't in person, right?
right. So it was kind of a perfect storm of events.
Today's episode of Upstate Impact is brought to you by Renewal by Anderson of Central New York. Summer's here, and it's the perfect time to upgrade your windows. With Renewal by Anderson's exclusive Fibrex material and expert installation, you'll get a cooler, more energy efficient home that looks as good as it feels. Click the link in our show notes to schedule your free quote today. Renewal by Anderson, superior products, exceptional service. Your first week,
Yeah.
what did it consist of? Like classes like you when you were in rehab centers, like similar or like your twist, or were you
Sorta.
like, no, this is I'm gonna do something different. Like this is
Yeah.
what will work for me. Hopefully it works for others.
Good question. So I took the topics that I had real life experience in. So I can talk eating disorders, I can talk trauma, and I would run those. And then what I found through over time is that it started to attract people and a certain type of person that would be like, we need a men's group. And so I knew like I was looking for a certain man. I was looking for a man that still um, was masculine in himself, yet had some emotional intelligence. So I knew that it had to be able to attract all types of men. They had to look at him and um, like it had to feel safe yet not threatening. And so I had two individuals kind of come out of nowhere and start my men's group. And then we started like an LGBTQ group that came to us. And then women in their postpartum time. I had a woman come to me and was like, I want to start a postpartum group. And so I was like, all right, like I might not have experience in all of these things that you guys do. So let's make it happen. So I just found that once I started and put the mission out there, it just started to attract like minded people that were lonely. Like there was a lot of people during COVID that were just lonely and like
Yeah.
looking for connection, looking for people. So the mission grew all on its own from there on.
Yeah. That's cool how it kind of just attracted the right
Yeah.
people. And I mean,
Yeah.
that tends to happen, right? Even when you start any business, it's really like the connections you make. And all of a sudden, oh, if we didn't meet this developer, then we would have never had this. And,
Right.
all of a sudden you look back, you're like, like I said, great timing. I mean, and you put yourself in a position to kind of take advantage of luck, but it's almost like being lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that first year I took every meeting. I took over 100 meetings of people that reached out that are just like, we're drawn to it for some reason. And
Yeah.
I want to meet you for this, this, and this. And a lot of them did not lead to anything, but some of them like really led to the next step or the connection that made the next step. And so Syracuse is small.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you meet one person and they're like, you got to meet this person. And I'm like, okay, I'll meet that person.
Yeah.
Right. And so all of a sudden, like you've created this network that regardless of what comes up or what you're looking for, you've got somebody on speed dial that you can call. And it just slowly happened.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny. Syracuse is small.
Syracuse is small. And
Someone
I,
introduces you and you're like, wait, half the time you already know them. Or you're like, "Oh, I think I'm
yeah.
Facebook friends with him or whatever it is."
Yeah, we played soccer together in seventh grade. No.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
I think how you said you had moved away and come back. I think when I lived in Asia and then came back, it was just like they call it, there's like a 6-month period where you repatriate. And I'm like, oh my God, because it opens your eyes up
Yeah.
so big that you come back and all I saw was like opportunity. And like we have the ability to build and grow and create Syracuse into this next whatever it is. And it was so much hope um, and excitement. Yet I felt really alone in that vision because I was the only one that was coming back from Asia after years abroad, right? And they're like, "Nah, Trace, we're good, we got PJ Dorsey's, we got Armory Square, we're good." And I'm like, "No, but we could be so much more." And so I guess that still lives in me too.
Yeah. It's funny how grateful you are for the experience and me as well, living somewhere else.
Yeah.
I grew up in Syracuse. I love Syracuse. Spent 7 years down in Austin, Texas. And that just only helped me appreciate coming back to Syracuse. We had our first kid. And then it was like, great place to raise a family. And it's all the little things, even like the cold and all these things. It's
Yeah.
like the grass is always a little greener. And sometimes people who never move away have this jaded view of Syracuse, like, oh, Syracuse stinks, the weather sucks, blah, blah, blah. But it's like, go spend a summer in Texas or, go
Right.
spend a rainy season in Asia. It's like all of a
Absolutely.
sudden you're going to be like, oh, I wish I was in Syracuse.
Absolutely. I remember the first time we flew back and you say the grass is greener. I just remember being like, it's so green here. Like it's
Literally
so
greener.
literally green here. And I agree. Like, and we were talking about Tully, like the small town, the lakes and the hiking and the like, you just don't realize what we have until it's not there anymore.
Yeah.
So I agree with that.
I mean, upstate summer, you can't beat it.
No, you really
You
can't.
can't beat it.
You really can't.
Safe space today.
Mm-hmm.
Give me a quick rundown of kind of what you guys offer. What's the day to day there? And I know you do events. I know you do a lot of different things, but walk us through.
Yeah.
You talked about where you started. Where are you guys now?
That's a great question. So, a big part of our mission is just rewriting the way we look at mental health. So, we are still up against a huge stigma with mental health. So many people are afraid to say that I'm not okay or that I'm struggling with anxiety or depression or I'm not happy or whatever that is. We're still struggling with that. And we will, I'm sure, for a long time, but really giving people the education that mental health is a spectrum and we move up and down that spectrum throughout our lives. And the goal is that when life is hitting us in the face and we are at this end of the spectrum, that we have the people and the tools around us to manage it. And so we are born onto that spectrum in different places and we end up in different places. And so it's just giving the education that, hey, John over here is not doing any better, right? We're all fluctuating on this.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a big part of just getting out into the community and spreading the mission. And the other big thing we do is collaboration, because mental health really goes with every other nonprofit here. It is hand in hand with what the Salvation Army is trying to do, what United Way is trying to do, what David's Refuge is trying to do. Like, mental health is integrated into all of that. And so collaboration is really important to us too. Um, and so right now we have over 10 different support groups that we're running, either virtual or in person at the space. So the foundation is these support groups. And then the rest is classes. So it's educating people on tools, how to manage their mental health. So it's art therapy, it's yoga, it's breath work, it's dance. We do Zumba and yoga on the roof during the summer months. So it's really just still building that. The next phase of Safe Space will be a place that you can go to and it's open around the clock, that you can walk in and get the services that you need. It's meant to be a prevention step. So we don't need people getting bad enough. Like, we want people to, before they hit that point of losing their family, their job, addictions, all of that, that they're getting the help that they need. And so I really truly believe that's done in community, and it's done without shame. And so I realize this is going to take some time, because so many generations have lived with mental health meaning something else. And so I do see, like, the younger generations, the college kids, grasp onto this a lot more, because it's just normal to talk about having a therapist and to talk about having a bad day, you know? And so I do see that our mission will continue to mold as it grows and as we grow.
No, that makes good sense. And I was, it's interesting you say it's like you're almost going to approach it from a preventative standpoint
Yeah.
and not just, hey, I'm struggling, I need help now. Apologize. Because me personally, I've never really experienced too many issues with mental health. I've been very fortunate, but I've had siblings
Mm.
who have had struggled when they were younger. And it was always a hard thing to grasp, especially when you're young.
Yeah.
And obviously, as time goes on, it's easier to kind of sympathize and empathize. But I think, and I'm not sure, maybe you guys already do this, but it's almost like for someone, whether they have kids or siblings or a spouse going through something, that education is just as important.
Yeah.
How can you be there to support them and help give them the tools to, get out of the rut or, get into a better space. And so it's pretty cool that you're kind of broadening your horizon with
Yeah.
that. And it's like, this is for everyone. Even if I've been great, I'm 35 years old. I still hopefully, next 40 years, where am I going to be? I mean, I still have hopefully a long life ahead. And it's like, what are things I can learn to make sure that I don't struggle?
Yeah, no, and I think that's very aware of you. And I think that, like, with our eating disorder programming, we definitely do parent and loved one support, because it's so vital, like, that the family understands how to speak, how to address, because when you don't, you end up saying the wrong things. You end up saying the things that they don't want to hear or need to hear. And I think it's also like, when you have someone that is struggling, like, it takes a toll on you, you know? And I can see how the relationship, like, my siblings, my older siblings were kind of out of the house when I started having to go into treatment, but I know it affected my younger sister. Like, I wasn't present. I was in treatment facilities. I know that attention got taken away from her. I know that that truly affected her. And so it's like, I know my parents still talk about it today. Like, what if, like, if we had somebody to talk to at that point, just an outlet, but there
Yeah.
was none of that. I mean, I think there was one therapist here in Syracuse, and she was up on the SU campus, that really had any idea how to deal with eating disorders. And so um, that wraparound support is vital. And I appreciate you just saying, like, hey, I'm lucky. I know I'm lucky. Like,
Yeah.
that this hasn't hit me yet. who knows what the next 40 years bring, and like just wanting to be prepared in a way, you know?
And the other way I look at it too is I have young kids and I have, two daughters and a son. And that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about is, what are things to look out for as a parent? I mean,
Mm,
my oldest is 4. So, hopefully there's no issues for at least the time being. But what are some ways, what are things you guys talk about to help, young parents say, I want to set my kid up for success in every way possible. And mental health is a big part of that.
big part of that. I think a lot right now is the screens with mental health, and we're not, it's walking a line, right? Because this is also the future. This is their future in many ways, yet it's also a coping strategy. So it's a way that we numb out at times. It's a way that we disassociate at times. And so that's a big, like, especially at the age your kids are, like, just monitoring that. I wouldn't say, you know, I think just having rules around it, but also knowing that I feel like if we keep them away from it too much, it's gonna,
And you
like
don't want them falling
they're gonna
behind.
fall behind.
Yeah.
So there's that. I think also emotions, like kids are supposed to be seen and heard, right? Emotions are good. Like we want kids to be having tantrums. We want kids to be expressing themselves, especially in that age, which usually it's the parent that feels super uncomfortable, which is why we quiet them down. They're making a scene, people are looking at us. But that is exactly what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
And so like we were sent to our rooms, or I was sent to my room when I was having a fit like that, right? What we're really trying to say now is that those emotions are okay. Let me help you process through them. Because when we squash them or when we send them to our room, we're saying your emotions are too big. I don't want to be around them,
Yeah.
right?
Or there's something wrong with
Or there's
that.
something wrong with
Yeah.
that. Also, you mirroring those emotions. So you having your own emotions, but dealing with them in a healthy way,
Yeah.
right? So maybe you get angry and you lose your patience with them. Then you go and you apologize and say, Daddy didn't handle that exactly how I probably should have, right? Apologizing is like kids realize you're human, right?
Yeah.
They realize you're human. And so I think the other part is getting them involved in things, and it's probably sports or other events, right, that get them physically moving, as well as the community aspect, and just it's making sure there's a balance with all of those things. But if we look at research, so much of it goes back to social media. A lot of
Oh,
what the
yeah.
kids are struggling right now, so much of it is because of social media. So it's just really, like, I read some statistic that, like, we're overprotective with other things and underprotective when it comes to social media. So
Yeah.
by the time your kids are a little bit older, I'm sure there will be more rules and regulations around all that stuff.
There's a great book I'm listening to, or I've listened to most of it. I have a little bit left. The Anxious Generation
Yes, I read
by
that.
oh, okay, yeah,
Yes.
and they talk about exactly. You wouldn't let your kid go to the park alone, but you let him online talking to God knows who, on these social media sites and things like that. And like I
Yeah.
said, that's clearly something to look out for. And my kids are younger; they're not on social media and anything like that. But screen time's tough.
It's so
I mean,
tough.
sometimes you just need to make coffee and
You need a
breakfast.
break.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
It's so real. I feel that.
And so you're right. There's a balance there, but it's you can also tell kids who watch and are playing games all the time or in control. It's hard for them to sit and watch a movie or just sit and read a book. It's like you see it in other kids, and it's like, all right, where's that balance of all right? We need sanity at our house, but also we want to set our kid up for success.
Right. And then they have trouble sitting, like we're seeing the issues in schools, right?
Yeah,
They have trouble sitting in class, paying attention because they're used to that constant dopamine addiction that, like, basically is going through as they're scrolling. Like, it's a constant hit. And now you want me to sit in front of a teacher and learn ABC sounds? Like, no,
yeah.
right? So it makes sense, but it's finding that balance, like you said.
Another hard part is the parents.
The pa-
I find myself. I
oh
mean, how
yeah,
often are you just looking at your phone? It's business now, right? Social media. But it also happens to be the same thing that has algorithms built to keep you glued to it. So all of a sudden
100%.
I'm checking, how the podcast post, make sure it went out. And now I'm down this rabbit hole of God knows what. And it's like, and my kids are there and I'm like, what am I doing? And I try to remind my wife, I go, you can't just say it and not do it, right? We
Yeah.
need to be consistent. That's hard.
It's so hard. And that's what they say, actions speak louder than words, right? Kids will, you can tell them to do things, but what they're really paying attention to is your actions all the time. So
Yeah.
how you treat another person or how you say please and thank you are like those are the things that they actually pick up. And so you're right. It's business now. Like same
Yeah.
with safe space, right? And it's like responding to people and so yeah, it's you're a big part of that. But I know it's a coping strategy for me too.
Yeah.
You know, I get tired. I get like I'm sitting there scrolling. So yeah,
It's tough.
it's tough. It's tough.
But, I think nothing like kids to put things in perspective and to help you develop kind of good habits. It's like, all right, there's no reason I can't sit here on the couch and scroll if I'm, alone.
Right.
But all of a sudden, an hour goes by, you get a headache, and you're like, what the heck did I just do for the last hour? But, to see your kids even in front of you, like, all right, they're young. I don't want to miss their youth.
You know.
At least that kind of helps trigger, all right, maybe I should just
Yeah.
put this phone in the other room for a little bit.
Or when the screen time thing comes up and you're like, oh, I've been on it a lot today. Like it's like I've lost
Oh,
hours.
it's like humbling.
Like
It's
that
like I have
is
a full-time
so
job looking at my phone,
No.
apparently. Oh, God,
I
that's
know,
tough.
but I think you brought up like what signs, like I think isolation's a big sign for kids that are a little bit older. If they're isolating themselves, if they're constantly in their room on their devices, like they need community. They need sunlight. They need
Yeah.
all of those things. And so isolation is probably one of the biggest signs that your kid might need more.
Yeah. Going back to the Anxious Generation book, they talk about how important it is for kids to interact with each other without adult intervention, letting them resolve
Yes.
conflict. Even if there's some yelling or pushing, as long as they're not getting hurt, that's literally how you build the skills for life,
Right.
right? Instead of adults saying, no, this is how it has to be. So they're talking about it's the safest time ever to let your kid go walk to the park. But people, are probably least likely to do it. I mean, part of that is social media. The one kid that did get kidnapped is around national news
Right.
now.
Right.
So people are afraid, but also you don't want to do it to your kid's detriment where it's like they got to learn.
They have to learn.
In
There has to be
18 short
consequences.
years, they're going to be on their own.
Absolutely. Like, and I think we see that now with the hovering parents. I mean, you see it in sports. Sports have like that's a whole nother podcast. But it's like we're trying to not allow our kids to feel pain or to feel hardship or any of that. And because of that, they're not working through this conflict resolution by themselves. They're not working through these things and realizing like, oh, I can't do that again because that didn't feel good, nor did that work out well. Right.
Yeah.
So you're right. This is when they should be making mistakes
Yeah.
and learning.
Yeah. It's funny you bring up sports. I've coached high school youth lacrosse for years down in Texas. And it's like, I'd always say parents want discipline unless it's their kid.
Oh, God. Yeah.
It's like,
So true. So
they're just,
true.
it's like, come on. Like, I was never, me, other coaches, they're usually not unreasonable.
Yeah.
Right. All right. You got to miss this game. You did something. And you would have thought you were taking away, their, I don't know, high school experience. It's like, it's one game.
Right.
It's like, if your kid doesn't learn a lesson, what's he going to do when he's 20, 25, when he's at work? It's, it seems so obvious, but people get so subjective with their kid. And it's, especially, moms, it's their baby, dad. I mean, dad, it's hard. And
it's parents living through their children in a lot of
Yes.
ways, or it feels like a personal attack because they're tied.
It's their kid.
It's their kid.
Yeah.
And so they can't separate themselves from their child in those moments. And that's mom and dad's work. Like that's where they need to be figuring that piece out. But most aren't even aware that it's even going on.
I tell you what, in my mid-20s, building up my emotional IQ just by talking to parents, having to cut a kid from a club team. It's business for us. It's our business.
Right.
But this is their kid. It's never business, right? It's not, it's always personal because you said, they're attached. It's their kid.
Yep.
So being able to have those conversations, kind of walk them through. He's in 5th grade. He's got a lot of time ahead of him to, I hope he proves me wrong.
Yeah.
And he makes the team next year. He could still go to Duke, when he goes to college. Like, it's still early. But, this isn't the end all be all. But don't get me wrong, most parents came around, but it's the the majority, the loud majority or
Oh,
minority
yeah.
that really make it tough to be in a position like
Oh,
that. I'm sure
yeah.
you experienced that teaching.
Absolutely. And I was in the special ed world, so it was different, but most parents, it's so entwined, especially with a special needs
Yeah,
student, that and you have to be very gentle with that because they don't see that. They don't, and it's the same in the
yeah,
sports world. It's like nothing you're going to say is going to make it okay. You just have to know, like, it's not about you. Like,
yeah. Well, I imagine it's hard in special ed because they have to be advocates, because
yes,
their
they
kid is
do.
obviously struggling with whatever disabilities, so they need to be more involved. But at what point is it detrimental? And
Yeah.
at what point do they, there's kids still need to go through the process or learn or,
Yeah, I watched that so beautifully. So my oldest niece, Hazel, was diagnosed with a genetic deletion, and so my oldest sister, Colleen, and Hazel actually passed away in
geez,
2020.
sorry to hear that.
Thank you. But what I watched Colleen do was advocate with doctors and therapists and school professionals, and she would sit and educate and read and research. And it's like, it was so beautiful because I realized nobody's going to do that for Hazel
Yeah.
except your parents, right? So I had that appreciation when it came to parents, that I'm like, they, in a lot of ways, are those children's voices. A lot of those kids were nonverbal or weren't able to, fully speak in that
Yeah.
way. And so they are their voices. And so you have to be so gentle because these parents becomes their life. It
Yeah.
really does. And so, um, yeah, and something, could never understand. I could never put myself in Colleen's place and understand that,
Yeah. Yeah. That's definitely different. It's like easier to sympathize with that than
Mhm.
like, a kid getting cut from a team. It's like,
Right.
because I had been there, right?
Oh,
Most people
absolutely.
have.
Most
It's
people
like, especially when they're
have.
young, it's like, they're going to be fine. Like, why are we having this conversation? But
Right.
that's a whole different animal.
Yeah.
And I can imagine navigating that
Yeah.
would be tough. Tracy, tell us listeners about how to get involved with Safe Space. Maybe
Yeah.
you just sparked, an interest, whether they're struggling, not struggling, maybe just to inquire, hey, this place sounds cool. I'm going to look it up online.
I
Obviously you
love
guys
that.
have a website, but
We
talk a little bit.
do. So safespacecny.org is the website. Our socials are probably the most up to date
Okay.
when it comes to what we're doing, the collaborations, our fundraisers, our events, our groups, all of that. And we have this massive volunteer ambassador program. So, like, any way people want to get involved, people are called to it sort of for many reasons. So they can reach out through any of our socials, which is SafeSpaceCNY, or they can email me, which I'm attached to the website. And so any way that they want to help, give back, be a part of, we welcome
Yeah.
in every sense.
Right here at 120 East Washington, right?
Yes. Yes. We love it. We love it here.
Tracy, thanks for coming on. And,
Yeah.
I'll have you on again soon. Would love an update and would love to check out
Awesome.
the Safe Space.
I appreciate it. So nice to meet you.
Too.
Thanks.